So I wrote an article about recruitment in the age of AI, and it was, my friend and I, we were talking, and he was like, "Why don't you make a video about it?" Right? But I'm like, making a video takes a lot of time, and I was working on finishing up chapter two, editing chapter two of my book. So I'm like, I really need to get chapter two out of the way. I was kind of like in a zone. And for anybody who writes, you know that like when you're in the zone, it's like you can't stop because you're gonna lose that momentum and that inspiration that you have, and you can't get it back. There's no getting it back. So like once you're in the zone, you have to just get everything out of your system, and then you can take a break and go do what you want. Which is kind of, it's not working right now is a good thing for me because at least I can write. You know what I mean? And so, of course, I was like, how should I approach? Like, I knew I had to do some research, right? Because sometimes we think we know, but then the data suggests something else, right? And as a truth seeker myself, um, I am more concerned with what is objectively true than my opinion or my belief or whatever the situation may be. Because I'm not someone who hold on to belief systems insofar as they no longer serve me, right? If I believe something and then evidence come to the fore that, hey, that wasn't correct, I will abandon that belief without a moment's hesitation because I understand that there is much that I do not know, and where I am substituting a lack of knowledge for belief, then when the knowledge comes into play, I must now abandon the belief. So I am not one of those people who, oh my God, I am so cultish in my um, state of mind that I am not open to being wrong or being corrected or to at least new information or a new perspective. And so I wrote the article. I did the research. It took me 6 hours to write the article between the research and the compiling and all of that. And then I posted it. And I'm like, I'm definitely not making a video right now because this is like just gonna be too much, right? So I need to take a break, do something else, yada yada yada. And just now, I saw a video on TikTok basically talking about the whole employment landscape, especially in Jamaica, because it is to the extent that the way employment has continued in Jamaica for so long and no one has done anything, like it is literal slavery. And no one has done anything about it. It is so mind blowing. And I was watching The Rookie. This is like a TV series that is on Netflix. I was watching it like years ago, but it was like 4 seasons. Then I saw it came on Netflix and it was like 7 seasons. I'm like, what the hell? I didn't know it was 7 seasons. So of course I have to rewatch it from the beginning because I don't remember much of the stuff. And in one of the episodes, one of the supporting cast, Officer West, right? He got a training officer who was a white dude. So Officer West is black. He got a training officer, I forgot the officer's name, who was white. And the officer was racist. So he would just profile people. And there was one incident where there was this guy just walking with his headphones on, which kind of pissed me off because I'm like, when you're out in public, you should not dull your senses. You should always be aware of your surroundings. Because as much as you should be allowed to go about your business, that's not how the world works. There are dangerous people out there and they will harm you. So the officer was pulling him over. Of course, he didn't hear because he had the headphones in and he had a hoodie over his head. And the rookie was like, he's not the guy that we're looking for, right? They're saying that they saw the guy somewhere. So there was a radio thing coming through to say, hey, suspect XYZ, blah, blah, blah. And of course, he was insisting that, no, that's the guy. Came out of the police vehicle, was telling the guy to stop, pulled his gun. Of course, the guy's not hearing anything because he had the headphones in. Tackled the guy to the ground, right? And so that's when the guy realized that, oh shit, something is going on. And then he got pissed, which obviously, it's a normal reaction for anybody who's going about your business and you're being tackled out of nowhere by this police officer. And then his mom came out and they were angry. And of course, being angry doesn't help the situation. And he pulled the gun on them and, was like, he's going to arrest everybody. And the supervisor came on the scene and was like, I promise I'm getting somewhere with this. You arrested the wrong guy. Because he was insisting that, he need to take them all down to the station and arrest them because they were resisting arrest and they were assaulting a police officer and a bunch of bullshit that we see normally happens in real life. Of course, it was dramatized for television. And the supervisor like, you are in the wrong. Let them go and apologize. Now, the reason why the supervisor did that was because the supervisor knew that this guy was racist, knew that this was his modus operandi. And then there were, I hate the term people of color because it diminishes the injustices that have been visited upon black people specifically by lumping us into this group called people of color. But there was an Asian uh, or mixed race officer, which Asian, and then there was this black guy, right? So he knew because they had reported to him that this guy's racist, and he worked with the guy before, saw the thing, but it's kind of like, oh well, he's not that bad, right? Anyways, the long and short of it is that um, they found out that he was doing these things and profiling people and putting black people's lives in danger, and they tried to the whole point was like there's nothing that we can do about it because what he's doing is not technically wrong. So he operated just within the bounds of the law. It's right at the edge that there is nothing that you can do because you can't fire him because there's so many systems in place that you can't just fire a cop, right? And it brought me back to the employment landscape where everyone knows that what is happening is wrong. It may not be illegal, but at the very least, it is unethical. And if your argument is that it is not illegal, you know you're doing something wrong. If your defense is that what I am doing is not illegal, you have lost the argument. And it was like this coalescing of the whole Jeffrey Epstein thing. Everyone knew what Jeffrey Epstein was doing. Everyone knew what Puff Daddy was doing. Everyone knew what R. Kelly was doing. Not only did they turn a blind eye to what was being done, but they participated actively in what was being done. And this is exactly what happens in the workplace. Oppressed peoples turn around and perpetuate the same kind and level of oppression that has or have and continues to be meted out to them. And the excuse is, well, you can't beat the system. And if you can't beat the system, you might as well get yours. So if I am in this corrupt corporate environment, and I know that speaking up will get you fired, and it will get you blacklisted, and I can just shut my mouth, keep my head down, and do my job, then I'll be okay. And so there is this false sense of security that we develop because we believe that we are, by virtue of our reticence and our apathy to what is going on, we are secure because we are not pushing the needle. We are not challenging the status quo. We are not speaking truth to power. And so power will see us as an ally, and that makes us safe. We know it's not true. But these systems of reconstituted slavery. I'm just making that up. I don't even know if reconstituted is the correct word, but I'm gonna go with that. Right? I believe in my article I call it a ghoulish vestige of our colonial past. Right? Because if you look historically on productivity in the workplace, productivity has increased drastically. If you look at the level of achievement in terms of qualification and experience and the quality of the labor force, it has drastically improved. But when you look at wages and salaries for the ordinary worker, it's in the gutter. And it is in the gutter because the ordinary workers participate in the systems of their own oppression as well. Because guess what? We walk into those interviews and we accept the abuse. You're being interviewed for a teller at a bank. You don't need more than one interview. You're not pushing the needle in that organization. You're not driving any kind of change or any kind of vision, or you're not doing anything. You're just coming and interfacing with the customer every day. Why do I need to do 5 rounds of interviews? But we put up with it because we have been cultured to believe that you should be grateful to have a job. because somehow having a job is a good thing. Paying to survive, paying to be alive is somehow a good thing. Not that you ought to be productive members of society and participate in the development and the advancement of a job. Having a job doesn't do that. So people, having a job does not mean that you're a productive member of society, because most jobs have nothing to do with society advancing. How many of you build the internet? How many of you build the telephone? How many of you developed AI systems? How many of you? What is driving society forward? What is pushing humanity forward? Your job? Hell no. Most jobs are unnecessary. Most of the jobs. Because much of the world is white-collar jobs that do nothing to advance society. Because we have developed a system of, it's like a gnawing maw of greed that sucks the energy from all of us. It is insatiable. And so they have to convince us that we need stuff that we don't. That is why I could not do sales. I can't do it. Because sales is you convincing people to buy things that they don't fucking need. Most of the stuff, most of the items that are for sale in the world right now are unnecessary. People don't need this shit. It's just fucking junk. So they manufacture this illusion that drives us to consume. Consume. And that's why you need a fucking job. And for some reason, the people, they just don't seem to be able to get enough. And we allow them. We participate in our own oppression, in our own systemic and systematic exploitation. We participate in it. And we defend these systems of oppression. And I am saying enough is enough. I'm saying time come. It is high time that we recognize that what is happening to us as a people, collectively, this is not about race or geographic, it is happening almost everywhere, right? And that is what, like, we're talking about the recruitment process, because I had a recent interview experience, which I made a video about and I talked about, and, my friend sent me another job offering, and when I looked at the location, and what was being offered, I'm like, they're not going to pay it. What they're paying, I can guarantee you it's not going to be able to cover my monthly expenses. So this is going to be a waste of my time. I'm not doing it. And that is how the conversation started. It's like, you should make a video about it. I'm like, dude, making a video, and talking about something requires a lot of research. At least for me, I'm not just going to come and speak, but I have to do some research. And so I have the research here. I didn't want to just come and read, right? So that's why I did it's a long ass preamble. It's almost 15 minutes, but whatever, right? So employers are losing the recruitment battle that they have created because they're still holding on to the old, outdated model, one in which they set the terms and conditions of employment and everyone else is supposed to be grateful. That is the idea, right? So a lot of people are stepping out of the workforce. We can see that they talk about the great migration, the great resignation, and people quitting, and millennials and Gen Z not wanting to work because we're just lazy, and all that bullshit. No, the issue is that employers haven't adjusted their operating model to fit this version of reality that we're living in now. Workers have access to information, they have more options, and they have generated expectations that make the old approach no longer effective. So this is what this video is about. I want to talk about recruitment in the age of AI. I looked at around 40 different studies from different government institutions across different countries, but specifically I am going to be focusing on Jamaica because I live in Jamaica, and I will also be looking at the United States of America because the US has a large data pool when it comes to employment statistics. Plus, our economies are similar in terms of consumption patterns, and we tend to replicate a lot of the stuff that the United States does. So it kind of makes sense. Now, Jamaica pays the lowest salaries in the Caribbean. And that is the reason why most Jamaicans who have tertiary education are leaving Jamaica and have left Jamaica. The labor crisis in Jamaica, as I said before, is a ghoulish vestige of our colonial past. This is just a rebranding or a repackaging or a new face to the plantocracy that existed in Jamaica some 60 odd years ago. According to a 2024 survey by the Caribbean Society for Human Resource Professionals, which examined 119 companies across 20 countries, salaries in Jamaica fell below the regional average of 91% of surveyed roles, the worst performance in the entire Caribbean region. Only 8.3% of roles in Jamaica paid above the market rate, compared to 97.3% in the Bahamas and 76.3% in Barbados. Jamaica dropped from third place in 2023 to dead last in 2024. But when you go to these interviews, these line fuckers will tell you that, oh, what you're being offered is the market rate. And that is even if the conversation about salary enters the picture in that interview. So, the 2025 PayPulse survey introduced the first affordability index. Basically, how much of your salary is left after you pay for your basic living expenses. In Jamaica, the average worker is left with just about 3.95% of their pay after covering rent, utilities, food, and transportation. When you compare that to Belize, where people have more than double their income left over, and that is about 233%, and Guyana, 138% of their salaries left over after they cover their basic living expenses, we can see that Jamaica is like the worst of the worst in the Caribbean when it comes to salaries or pay disparities, if you want to call it that. Now, the average worker in Jamaica earns roughly 150,000 Jamaican to 200,000 Jamaican dollars gross per month, which is about 960 to 1,280 US dollars per month. And that is like generous, because for a very long time, I never made 150,000. I've worked for 21 years. And it is in the last probably 6 years of my career that I was making $150,000. So I don't know where these salary figures are coming from, but this is according to, Glassdoor and the I forgot the name. There's Glassdoor, there's PayScale, and there's another one. That's the average that they are showing. So I don't know, right? But this is 2026 data. So as of January 2026. But this was not true 5 years ago. I can guarantee you that, right? So in the city, and that is like Kingston, St. Andrew, right? The weekly cost for rent, food, utilities, and transportation run to about 33,000 to 44,000 Jamaican dollars per week. The minimum wage is 16,000 Jamaican dollars per week, or 100 US dollars. That is slated to go to 18,000 Jamaican dollars, but I forget when the government said that they would implement that increase. So you can realize that that does not come anywhere near to covering the weekly expenses. You're looking at $33,000 in actual cost versus a minimum wage of $16,000. Now, real wages have failed to keep pace with cumulative inflation, which has exceeded 60% across essential categories over the past decade. And I've done this math myself, because when I was asking for my raise back in 2025, when I was contemplating whether or not I should leave my job, because I was working there for 3 years, and my pay was I was having to find alternative income to supplement my income to cover my expenses. And working for the company for 3 years, not receiving a raise, I looked at the impact of inflation on my real income, like my take-home pay, and it was $800,000. And I'm like, I can't fucking foot $800,000. In 3 years, the impact of inflation on my salary was $800,000. And I'm like, y'all need to give me a raise. And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, peace, I'm out. Because I'm not going to do this shit with you. We're not going to do this. I left. Because I'm like, the longer I stay, the worse off I become, and the more comfortable I become, and the more difficult it is for me to leave. So you have to nip it in the bud. If you're working for a company and you're not where you want to be in 3 years, leave and find another job. Because once you touch 5 years, it's so hard for you to leave. You become complacent, and the whole interview process is so vexing that nobody wants to do interviews. And that's one of the reasons why people stay in jobs that they don't like, because like, I just don't want to deal with these fuckers out here in the job. I don't want to go job hunting. It's like dating. It's horrible. It's a nightmare. Nobody wants to do it, right? So mortgage for suitable homes now top 20 million Jamaican dollars. I don't even think in all the years that I've been working, I've worked 20 well, I've worked, it's 21 years. I don't think that in the 21 years I've worked 30 million. Think about that. I don't think in all the time that I've been working, I've worked 30 million Jamaican dollars. I don't think so. And a house is roughly $20 million, right? And that is well out of reach for most of us, because remember, you're going to look, the cost of the house will determine how much, well, the cost of the house and your age is going to determine, because of course they're going to look at how old you are and how many years you have left to retire, and then they're going to calculate the mortgage based on that, because you have so many years left to retire, so that's how long you'll be earning an income, and so we want you to pay it off before, within the retirement, within your time of retirement, and so that's how your mortgage is going to be calculated. We can't afford it. You can't be making $150,000 and paying a $70,000 mortgage. You can't. You can't be making $150,000 a month and your mortgage is $50,000. You can't afford it. It's just not possible. So, for most of, and then even with like the middle class household that is bringing about 300, because if you combine man and a woman both earning $150,000, that's $300,000 a month. After you have accounted for expenses, groceries, they barely have anything left to save, right? And remember, it's not what you work, it's how much you save. So naturally, some people decide to leave Jamaica and find a better quality of life elsewhere. In 2022, Jamaica ranked second worst in the world on the Human Flight and Brain Drain Index. Over 80% of Jamaicans with tertiary education who were trained in Jamaica now live abroad. Between 1965 and the year 2000, 85% of Jamaicans that were skilled laborers emigrated, 12 times higher than the immigration rates in wealthier countries. The health sector is probably the most severely affected. There are 9 times as many Jamaican-born nurses working in the United States of America as there are in Jamaica. Every year, we lose about 500 specialist nurses to migration. In 2024 alone, the Nursing Council got over 1,140 verification requests from foreign employers. Almost a quarter of the nursing workforce is trying to leave. Hospital vacancy rates are over 40%. It's not much better in the education sector because teachers are leaving too. Jamaica lost about 10% of its teacher workforce in just 2 years, including 1,538 departures over 9 months in 2022. The head of the Caribbean Union of Teachers said Jamaican teachers left because they were overworked, underpaid, and undervalued. CSHRP, that is the Caribbean, this is the HR professional people. The deputy board chairman, Vaughan McDonald, warned that Jamaica's low salaries could exacerbate Jamaica's brain drain, pointing out that many Jamaicans are already leaving for the Bahamas, where salaries in key sectors are much more competitive. So, the problem is that the employers in Jamaica are operating as if we're still living in the year 1985, right? Jamaica's whole employment system is stuck in the past. The Labor Relations Code is over 40 years old. How is a 40-year-old law supposed to serve us in this present time? The Factories Act, which is supposed to handle workplace safety, goes all the way back to the 1940s and only covers a small number of workplaces. They've been working on this Comprehensive Occupational and Safety Act for a very long time, and to this day they have not passed that act. So since the law is very old, we know that the law is definitely not on our side, because back then, workers basically had International Trade Union Confederation reports constant anti-union practices. Only about 20% of Jamaicans are in a union. In the export processing zones, there aren't any unions at all. Consequently, we have companies that basically threatened employees that, hey, if you join a union, then you can't work here. I know that when I was working at Holiday Inn, you could not be in a union. Full stop. The owner of the property is like, we're not hiring people who are part of a union, because they view unions as problematic, because it's kind of like they can't do what they want with the employees. They can't make certain policies that perhaps encroach on your constitution, on your rights, because then they would have to pass it by the union, or at least those policies would not be applicable to union employees. And because they wanted total control over their workforce, they decided that if you're a part of a union, you can't work here, right? Some, of course, they have workers' council. When I was working at Bahia, they had a staff relations officer, but it was much ado about nothing. It never really, you would have the staff relation, but they would, because remember, this person works for the company, so it's not like say it's an outside entity. And I think perhaps what the government should do is that for large corporations or large businesses, if you have more than 200 employees, then the government should have somebody working create a branch at the Ministry of Labor where you have a liaison that oversees staff affairs, because there's nobody advocating for you as an employee. If something happens at work, whether you're right or wrong, is you against the company, because HR works for the company. So HR is not on your side. Your manager or your supervisor works for the company, so they're not on your side. And the only person who has your interest at heart is you. And because you may not be of faith with the practices and the legal whatever, because of course the company is getting advice from a lawyer or a legal counsel, and you are just walking in there all by your lonesome. And we're not a litigious society like the United States of America, where you can just get a lawyer to just go and do stuff for you pro bono or whatever the case. That doesn't work here in Jamaica, because the lawyers are just as crooked as any politician in this fucking country. So it doesn't even make it, because it's all a big club and everybody knows everybody, and everyone who is in any position of power in this country, they know each other. So you're not going to get anywhere, if something happens to you, unless you're one of them or they see you as one of them. If not, you're screwed. And that is just a fact. So there's nobody advocating on behalf of employees, right? And so, because they fight out the unions. And on the US, is it AWS? Oh God, there was a union that got a very good deal. I forgot the union that got a very good deal for their employees that work in the car manufacturing industry. Like they got, they were able to get them COLA, cost of living adjustment. They were able to get them some kind of performance bonus incentive pay. They were able to get them even like there were some, because what happens too is, what companies started to do is they started to classify you as salaried, right? So they'll pay you just like they'll pay you the shit pay, but then classify you as salaried. So they do, because salaried employees do not get paid overtime. You don't get overtime pay. So you'll be there working for pennies, and they're like, oh, you're a salaried. So they classify the role as a salaried role, but you're not getting the typical pay of a salaried employee. But then you're working all this overtime and you're doing all this extra work, but you're not entitled to overtime pay because you're classified as these are all the bullshit that employers are doing. Or as in my case, when I was working for Holiday Inn, working there for almost 12 years, and they would give you these fixed term contracts. So you start out, you get 6 months, and then the 6 months elapses and you have to wait 3 weeks, because the law considers anything the 3 week period was the loophole that they found. Because if they didn't wait 3 weeks to give you the new contract, then the law would consider the 2 week as vacation, and then it would be a continuous employment, and not regardless of what the contract says. So the law would abandon the contract, even though I went to the Ministry of Labor, and this is one of the things too. These people that work in these government agencies that are supposed to help us, they don't give a fuck. When you call them or when you go in to talk to them, it's like you are bothering them. I'm not a lawyer, but I did business and corporate law when I was doing the ACCA, the accounting technician. It wasn't I finished the certified accounting technician part, and I was doing the actual accounting. So I was doing ACCA. There's a designation, I think it's FA something. I forgot the designation, but I was doing that. And we did corporate and business law. And we looked at contract consideration and offer, invitation to treat, and a bunch of other stuff. And what they look at is the nature of the employment arrangement. So even if you have a contract, but the nature of the employment is one in which you are treated as an employee, then the law will ignore the contract and say, well, in substance, the person is an employee. So we're going to treat them as an employee, and the rights that accrues to an employee will be given to this person. So of course I'm expecting the lady to listen to what I'm saying. The moment I said, oh, and she's like, well, we just have to work with the, and that was the end of this. So I mean, what is this bitch? And it's a thing that I hate with government workers in Jamaica. When you go to these places or when you call them, it's like you're bothering them. You're interrupting their day. And it's like, bitch, this is what you get paid to do. I called the SEC and it was I had to threaten. Because when I was working, they were saying that we were working from home, and they were saying that we have to come back into the office. And I'm like, I'm not doing that because I can barely afford to pay my rent with the money that you're paying me. I'm not going to come back in the office full time. I'm not fucking doing that because that's going to be more money out of my pocket that I cannot afford. Right, so I called the S because what they were telling us didn't make any sense. What they were telling us at work did not make any sense. So of course I called the SEZ and I had some questions as to the framework that the SE uses to govern the SE's Special Economic Zones Authority uses to govern the free zone, right? And they just flipped me off. And so I had to let them know that I will, if I need to write to the ministry of, I forget which ministry is responsible for them, to get an access to information request to get it. That's exactly what I'll do. But you'll just be wasting my time. I will get the information one way or another. So you can give me the information now, and that's going to take you however long it takes you to give me the information. I'm going to write, I'm going to exercise my constitutional right to get information from you using the legal channel. And if you refuse to comply, I'll write to the tribunal. And that is how I get a director to call me. But it's like, if I didn't know, and I didn't sound like I was intelligent and educated, I would not have gotten someone to speak to me. And as much as I was grateful for the information, it's like, if it was any other person who called, they would not have gotten any information. Right? And I called the ministry of because they were telling us, there was this thing where they gave us, we had to work on the Jamaican holidays, on the public holidays, right? And then they gave us these free days, they call it. But they were saying if you don't take the free day within the quarter that you earned it, you would lose it. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. By law, if I work on a public holiday, I am entitled to double pay. So if when I take the free day that you're offering or not, it just simply means that you will have to now pay me for the day because I did not take the free day. Right, so of course I called the ministry to get some clarity on that. And boy, from the Ministry of Education, of Labour. Why do I say Ministry of Education? The gentleman from the Ministry of Labour asked me if this is a hill that I want to die on. And I'm like, are you kidding me right now? When I was, because I'm like, if what they're doing would be illegal, you can't have a company that is essentially, robbing people of wages that they have earned. And of course I looked at the employment and then I wrote to the permanent secretary. But apparently she too big to answer questions from the public. Because this is the thing with these fucking people in government. They forget that they're public servant. They forget that they are actually there to serve the public. So of course she didn't answer. So some peon in the department, because I mean she's the permanent secretary, who are you? You're nobody for her to respond to you, so she didn't respond to me. It's some dude who obviously have a law degree and believe that, okay, I don't know the law, and so I'm just an idiot and he's just going to tell me whatever he feels like telling me and using these words that he think I don't understand. Didn't answer the question. Did not answer the question. At all. And because I wrote a very clear and articulate email to the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Labour asking specifically, right, this is the situation, this is what because a company policy cannot override the law. You cannot, as a company, make a policy that is going to disenfranchise. What's the word? Franchise is the right to vote. I don't know. That is going to the word is escaping me now. But if the law says the employee is entitled to this benefit, you as an employer cannot make a policy that deprives the employee. You cannot. You can't. You just can't. The fact that you have the policy has no bearing on anything. If the law says this is what the employee is entitled to, you are obliged. Meaning you have no choice but to follow the law. Right? And of course, they just weren't interested. They weren't interested. It's kind of like, well, find another job. That was what the guy was basically telling me at because at the end of the day, you go lose. And this is how these systems of oppression continues, because they'll tell you, oh, we have this agency that is the watchdog that is supposed to oversee, and you can call and you can report and you can do this and you can do that. And when you do, they're basically telling you that you're going to lose. You're not going to win this fight. And if you pursue this, you are going to lose. And guess what? A lot of people, 99.99% of people are going to be like, you know what? It's not worth it. And I didn't care, but they just did not help me. Because it was apparently a waste of their time. They didn't want to investigate whether or not a company was depriving people of what was due to them constitutionally or legally. And he come up with, I forgot what he said something when I asked about the pay. So if I work on the holiday, the company has this policy to say, okay, we'll give you a free day because based on the nature of our work, we can't afford for you to not work on the holiday, which at the end of the day, the company is supposed to make a policy to say you have to work on the holiday either. It should be a choice. You are entitled to the day. The company should not be able to force you to come in on a holiday if you do not want to. But like I said, all of these people are in the same fucking club and we are not in it. So guess what? The laws are not written to protect us. And even if when they do have these laws, because at some point, we band together and decide we're tired of this bullshit, and they make the laws, then there's the enforcement part of it. So yes, you have the laws and the books, but who's going to enforce it? When you call them, they call and rat you out and you end up lose your job. Of course, they're not going to just fire you like that. They're going to do things, either make your environment toxic, or they're going to cite you for every little infraction, because of course we're human beings, and maybe you're a second late and they're like, well, your job started at 8 o'clock, you came at 8 o'clock and 1 second, you were late, we're going to write you up. It happens. So we have a system of oppression, and then you have people who keeps the system going. You have people who have been, it's just like how you'll have a situation where somebody was raped and trafficked, and then they turn around and become a recruiter for the traffickers. So it happened to them, and yet here they are luring other people into the same unfortunate. This is the world that we live in. And that is why the employment landscape, is like that. Because guess what? The HR is not getting much pay either. If you check what they're getting, they're not getting much pay either. Where I was working, I've come to believe that what I was asking for in terms of a raise, albeit within the realm of what the role commands, was probably either the same as what some of the managers, supervisors were getting, or more. That is just to show you how corrupt the company is. You cannot have a situation where if I come in and someone has been there for 15 years, I am making more money than them. It should not happen. Because you should then, once you have revised the compensation package for the role, you need to now bump those persons up so that they cannot be there working for you for 10 years and somebody just come working and they're training that person and they're the senior person on the team, and the person who just arrived is making more money than them simply because they came in 10 years later. Not because of anything else. Simply because they came in 10 years later, and this is what the market rate is at, and you have no choice but to pay this, because that is the only way you're going to attract people to come and take those jobs. And the people who have been working for you for 10 years are still working at the rate that they started 10 years ago. So you can just imagine, you come in, you have people working there for 15 years and you're new, and a year or two later you're saying, hey, I need a raise because inflation, yada, yada, yada. And what you're asking, because you're already making more than these people who are your team leads, supervisors, and managers. And you're now going to them to ask for a raise. And you're going to see what you're making and say, but I'm not making as much as you, and you're coming here asking me for a goddamn raise. Are you out of your goddamn mind? Of course they're not going to tell you that. But you're not going to get that fucking raise. Because now they know you're making more than them. Because you're asking, because of course you would have to ask for the amount, the figure that you want. And they're going to see what you're asking for. Because if you're asking for a raise, it simply means that you're getting more than this. You're getting a little bit less than this. So there's no way you're going to get that raise. And it has nothing to do with whether or not you have a legitimate ask, right? Is that you're in this toxic space where people are being exploited. And then the people who are being exploited, they resent you instead of the people who are exploiting them. Because how dare you now come? You just come and you want to get more money than me. And I've been here working my ass off for 10 years. Like, bitch, I didn't tell you to sit here for 10 years and didn't ask for your due. And then they now become your enemy. Because as much as they're not satisfied with their salary, they do that. The fact that you're making more than them is you are now enemy number one. How dare you? And these are the same people who convince you when you're in the interview and they're offering the thing. They're telling you, oh no, this is the market rate. And guess what? You don't know that. Because Jamaica is not like the US where you have salary information, pay scale information promulgated anywhere for you to check. Okay, I see a role advertised, let me go check the Bureau of Labor Statistics to see what the role. There's nothing to research. All you have is, perhaps if you know someone who works there, you can ask them, what are they paying? But you would have no objective information or verifiable information as to the pay scale for the role that you're applying for. None. And that is how they get us, because everyone holds their salary information close to their vest. And then everyone is underpaid and nobody knows, because they're all assuming that you're making more than them. I had that experience when I was working at Holiday Inn. Everybody thought I was making a whole lot of money, and I'm like, there's my pay stub. And I was like, oh wow, it's the same as me. And I'm like, yeah, we're all being underpaid. Like, fuck you thought. I was special. I'm not special. We're all being exploited. And the sooner we recognize that, then the better off we will be.